Okay, hi everyone, and let's talk about Chapter 6 of ADMG 474, Executing Project Management. This chapter is all about scope planning. Now, the corresponding chapter in the PMI PMBOK is Chapter 5, Project Scope Management. From the reading, you will notice Exhibit 6.1, and this is a really good flow of what all happens in scope planning. And we start with our project charter, and our project charter helps us plan our scope management, right? We always, and we know that according to the PMI, every one of our key areas, we always start by planning what we're going to do in that area. So we use our project charter to help us get started with our scope management plan. Then notice that an input is also our stakeholder register, because as part of after we plan our scope management plan, we go into gathering requirements, because we don't know what our scope of work is going to be until we gather requirements. Now, our stakeholder register helps us know who to go talk to and why we need to go talk to these people regarding the requirements that we have for our project. Okay, we use our requirements to define our scope of work. We really don't know what our scope of work is until we've talked to our stakeholders and they've told us. We've gathered requirements. Okay, so then we define our scope of work, we create our work breakdown structure, and then once we have our work breakdown structure created, we perform integrated change control. That's how we assure we try, well, that's certainly how we try to avoid scope creep. Now, notice these arrows. Out of each one of these, there are outputs that come as a result of each of these processes. So from our collect requirements, the output from that is a requirements traceability matrix. Out of our defined scope comes a scope statement. Out of our create work breakdown structure comes a scope baseline with our WBS. And then, of course, performing integrated change control, we have approved changes and updates to our project. Now, your reading will talk about gathering requirements. There are a number of different ways with which we gather requirements in a project. One of the most frequently used is just a direct interview. Talk to the users, talk to the stakeholders involved, and gather requirements. We collect requirements, and as such we gather stakeholder input in order to collect those requirements. We use that information to define our scope. We list our deliverables and our acceptance criteria. So part of gathering requirements is about determining from our stakeholders what meets an acceptable standard. If we want to know what an acceptable band would be, we ask our stakeholder, okay, what do you feel is an acceptable band? What are you looking for? And we'll get that information. We'll get that information back. For example, maybe for the big band era, the acceptable would be a multi-piece orchestra that plays hits from the 1940s. So that and has a big band sound. So that would end up being acceptable criteria. So I would suggest then a 3 or 4 piece band, not going to cut it, right? Probably percussion, or probably a lot of brass. The big band era was known for a lot of brass, so I would expect a large brass section in that band. That would be part of my criteria. I'd want an authentic 40s era band would be probably my criteria if I was going for it. So anyway, you would establish project boundaries. You would create a project description. Boundaries are always what we will do as part of the project, and then what we will not do as part of the project. What is in scope, what is out of scope. We set boundaries and we specify what those boundaries are. We specify what's in and out of scope. We create our work breakdown structure. There are many formats that exist. Your book will show you a few of those formats. For our project, we will be using Microsoft Project to manage our scope and to report project progress. Now, for this week's work. You will be learning what a work breakdown structure table looks like, and then that table will then inform what we do from a perspective of creating the work breakdown structure. So sometimes we sketch it out and then we use that data to build our Microsoft project data. And part of creating the work breakdown structure is decomposing deliverables into work packages. Pay special attention to 6-4E on how to construct a WBS, because this really gets into a nice discussion about how to identify those major deliverables and then how to decompose those deliverables into activities or tasks. It's a good one for you to look at. Once your work breakdown structure is completed, we validate that, and then once it's validated, and how do we validate it? We check with our customer, we check with our user or our sponsor, and we get permission and approval, and we say, yeah, is this correct? Did we do what you thought we were going to? Are we going to do what you think we're going to do? So we validate our work breakdown structure, and then we baseline it. So you want to make sure what it means to baseline a project. And then, of course, we want to control changes. We want some kind of formal change control method so that we make sure we do not get out of scope, schedule, or budget, that we don't mess up that triple constraint. All right, so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me this week on the topics, and I hope you have a great week. Take care.